The seed I have sown. On this episode of Pushback.
Go, Johnny, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go. Go, Johnny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Johnny, and this is another episode of Pushback. You know, I have to kind of chuckle at myself. You know, I'm coming up on almost 5 years of doing this podcast, and I never thought at the beginning that I would be sort of this communist conspiracy theory guy. If you listen to my last podcast, comparing directly the things that are happening in the world of media, censorship, and big politics, about how we really compare to communist China. Oh, if you laugh so you don't cry, because it's a serious issue. And you know, the more I get into these topics, the more I realize what's at stake. And of course, the whole reason this podcast was created in the first place was to push back. If you're concerned about where the culture is headed, then maybe it's time to push back. And that's exactly where we are as a society, and that has not changed over the last 5 years, although I hope that I could have been at least a voice of reason and will continue to be as we go forward in this discussion about our country and about politics and about our role in this world as ambassadors of heaven. You know, there is a chilling quote by somebody who is very famous, and the quote is this: "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Well, that was spoken by Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union. So here I go again. Oh, you see, it's true words spoken by somebody who had a strategy and a plan to create an ideology, to create an indoctrination of a whole nation. And he felt like the children would be the appropriate place to start. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, I've continued this series throughout this year, as you are well aware, about talking about how we are killing our kids. I feel like it's a sort of a wake-up call. It's a dark title, and yet it's sort of a shake, like grabbing you by the shoulders and shaking and saying, we need to get alert about this. We need to be vigilant about this, because our children are what is at stake. Vladimir Lenin knew it. And I believe that in this world of politics, which is my topic through the end of this month, we have to understand that it's always about power and control. Now, I shouldn't say always, because I know that there are people in power and people in politics whose heart is for the people and not for power and for control. But we have to understand that there is a political spirit, and we can sense it. You can sense it. I can sense it. That there's something going on that is beyond just human reasoning. It's definitely principalities and powers. It's interesting that they use the word powers, because it's about power and control. That's the political spirit. It's interesting, just over the last 2 weeks, JFK Jr. Ended his campaign for presidency and endorsed Donald Trump. And he gave a list of why he's endorsing Donald Trump, but one of the things on the list, the prominent things on the list, was the war on children, quote, end quote. I think it's so interesting because we can see it. We can see it with our eyes, that there's something happening. And our children are caught in this crossfire of this culture war. And they are casualties of a culture war. Now, I'm not even saying that the culture war shouldn't take place. That's part of really the purpose of this podcast, is to create lines and say, this is a line I won't cross. This is something I'm willing to fight for, to put myself into the ring and the sphere of society and have my voice be heard. So a culture war is sometimes necessary, but I believe our children are these unnecessary casualties of a necessary culture war. They're caught in the crossfire because of what Vladimir Lenin said. Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. He believed that with his heart, and some would say that he succeeded. See, in order to obtain power and control, there needs to be a strategy. And I believe that what we're seeing today is exactly that strategy. It's a strategy about power and control, and it's targeted and directed towards our children. See, if you are going to teach something that will never be uprooted, it's probably wise to start with the schools and the universities. And isn't that what we're seeing? Isn't that what we're seeing with this DEI and woke ideology, the indoctrination of our children in these schools and universities? What we're seeing there is about political control. It's about training the children. That's what it's about. I find it very interesting that the woke left ideology is against school choice. That's interesting to me, because they're waving this flag of freedom and democracy, and yet they're against school choice. And the answer is what? The question is why? And the answer is control. See, if you get to go where your morals align, if you get to pick and choose the schools that line up with your values, then they lose control. See, if we end the Department of Education, which some are proposing, and we push it back to the states, which is what the Founding Fathers intended, then you have 49 other states to choose from. And they can't have that. That allows the control and the power to slip through their fingers when you have the control and power to do what you will with your children and send them to the education of your choice. So do you see the battle line here? We need to press those who are against school choice and ask them why. What is their motivation? What could possibly be the harm in having people choose where they go? And the answer is power and control. We lose power and control. See, they feel like they have an indoctrination, something to teach the children that will never be uprooted. They feel like they have something, and as long as they can control where you go and not give you options, then they have what they need. So what is strategy? Well, first strategy always, money makes the world go round. So the first is to tie funding to curriculum. See, it's never been the government's role to actually indoctrinate curriculum to our children. That hasn't been the role. That's the job of the local governments and school boards. That's what they were created for. And in fact, it goes against the mandate of education. See, they're looking to decouple the role or mandate of school from the ideology and indoctrination. School is now about ideology and indoctrination, not about education. Let's be clear. That's their messaging. Now, I want to say on a side note, on a caveat, that I believe that weak family structures have actually created an environment for this to move into. I believe weak families create a potential space for others to move in. And I believe that public school has become sort of that avenue where now, okay, you want us to take care of your children, then we get to take care of your children. And so again, as I'll always go back to, because it's my life call, that strong family actually doesn't create that vacuum. Strong family cancels the vacuum of allowing other ideologies in. And strong families are the key and the backbone to every cultural situation. So the first target is to tie funding to curriculum. The second target was parents, trying to disempower parents to play a role in their child's education. You send your child to us and we'll take it from here. Thank you very much. That is the most dangerous part of this power and control battle. Now, I will say that last year, 2023, is often called the year of the parent. Parents stood up and said, wait a minute, no. We get to control what happens to our children and what is taught to our children. And there was some serious pushback from that. Now, that obviously didn't meet resistance all over this country. And some of this woke ideology has moved in a major way, and certainly in the state in which I live, in Minnesota. First target was to tie funding to curriculum. Second is to target parents. And hear me in this, I believe that the third target eventually will be homeschooling. Because that's still an option for us when we are seeing our children being abused and indoctrinated in our school system. We can just bring them home and we can teach them here. Well, at some point, that's going to become unacceptable because, again, they're going to lose control. And as it gets worse, as it gets darker, as it gets uglier, more parents are going to choose to do that. And then the only way to stop that from happening is to create some sort of environment where homeschooling is no longer acceptable. And so we need to be vigilant. That's the point of this podcast. We need to do it now before these rights are taken away from us. We need to be vigilant about what we believe, what is true, what is constitutional, what is our rights as parents, and we need to keep ringing that bell and being proactive and creating legislation that protects our rights to teach our children the way that we see fit as their parents. It's about protecting our children. See, I believe there is a disastrous ambivalence towards the children in our society right now. What do I mean by that? Because I just said they're being targeted, but their hearts are not being targeted. They are a pawn in a battle of worldview. I believe that the healthiest environment that we can create are healthy school boards that actually represent the people in our area. I live near Staples, Minnesota. We need to elect a school board that represents the hearts and the attitudes of the people in Staples, Minnesota, so that when we send our children to this public school in Staples, Minnesota, we actually have representation of what that's going to look like. That's how it's supposed to work. Right now, I believe that school boards simply just roll with the tide, because if they don't, they lose their funding. Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? And even greater, even more of a healthy environment is that when we have choices, when our neighboring town, Wadena, actually lines up more with my moralistic beliefs, I can send my children there because that is my choice. And so I believe that is a critical discussion point in this season of politics. See, there's an ambivalence toward the children because they are a means to an end, not a heart that needs to be taught, fostered, and cared for. See, as hard as it is to hear this, I believe it's easier to embrace violent, antisocial LGBTQ behavior as normal than it is to try to fix the problems. And fix the problems that they created in the first place. It's certainly cheaper. It's certainly cheaper to put tampons in a boys' locker room than it is to try to treat the heart of the person who has sexual identity crisis. It breaks my heart. But that's where we're at. This is that ambivalence towards our children. And they ultimately will become a left woke voter. It's about power and control. So we've been given a mandate as Christians, as ambassadors of heaven. We've been told that we are the ones that are responsible for our children. It's interesting, in Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." It's very interesting to me because that sounds kind of eerily similar to what Vladimir Lenin said. He said, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Proverbs says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it." It's a strategy. And here's the sobering line of this podcast, my friends. Somebody will sow seeds into your children's lives. Who will it be? See, I believe there's battle lines between Scripture and what Lenin said. There's always going to be somebody looking to bring influence into your children's lives. And they all believe that if they can just get a hold, even for a little short period of time, that those seeds will never be uprooted. Well, take heart in that, because the Bible gives us the same template. It gives us the same strategy that when we sow into our children intentionally, diligently, that those seeds that are sown will never be uprooted. I believe that with my whole heart. I see that in my own children. They have deep roots given to us by God and perpetuated by us as their parents. I'm not concerned that the winds of life are going to push them away or alter them in any way because their roots are so deep. That's what I've done. That's what my wife has done. That's what their grandparents have done, sowed into their lives so that those roots are deep and will never be uprooted. That's what we want. This is an unapologetic strategy by Lenin, an unapologetic strategy by God himself and in Scripture. This is the strategy. Sow into your children. Be intentional. Somebody is doing it. When you send your kids to public school, be warned and alerted. They are being sown into. And you need to be as diligent, more diligent to battle those places, to say, no, this is how I expect my child to be taught. You have the right to do that. You have the ability to do that, and you actually need to do that. My friends, we are born into a battle. This is what this is about. And our children, it matters. It matters that we are proactive about what is being brought into their minds through social media, through school, through indoctrination, through textbooks, through the changing of history, so the things that are being taught to them. We need to be as vigilant, more vigilant, to push back. I think it's very interesting that even despite the pushback, despite the pain, despite the statistics that have been coming out showing that our children are more mentally unstable and unfit than ever, more physically unstable and unfit than ever, that there isn't a shift or a change or an acknowledgement that the strategy that they've been using over the last 50 years isn't working. Instead, what they are doing is they're doubling down on it. They're saying, okay, let's teach sexual education even at a younger age. We just haven't gone far enough. And they keep pushing the envelope to more radical, destructive ideas. If that's true and you believe what I just said, then we need to double down on the truth and the appropriateness of parental-led guidance in their lives. I love train up the child in the way he should go. I talk about it's a buzzword in this podcast. The ways of heaven. His ways are higher than our ways. And we can count on that. And we train them in the way of the Lord. Deuteronomy 6:6 shows the intentionality and the diligence that needs to be done here. And it says, and these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. The ways of the Lord should be so evident that the second they wake up, to the time they go down to bed, to when they're sitting at the dining room table, to when they're going in and out of your house, to what they wear, to what they see, it should all be about the ways of the Lord. That is the diligence that's required by parents to bring the message of hope to this world. Excuse me. It's that important. Deuteronomy is saying it should be so important that it is ever present. That's how diligent we need to be. The second they walk through that school door, that public school door, believe me, there is an intentionality. I guarantee you that it is on the doorposts, it's on the walls, it's where they're going, it's on the t-shirts they're wearing. There's an indoctrination that's taking place. There are seeds that are being sown that they feel like even the 4 years of high school, it will never be uprooted. Well, this is saying that every day, every moment of every day in our lives, the ways of the Lord and his commandments need to be center of our child's heart. And the good news is that that will never be uprooted. We can do it, parents. We have to do it. We live in a critical time where we need to be so intentional. We can't live with an ambivalence towards our children like the world is doing. We are the ones that can save them. And we are the ones that will save them. I love you, my listeners. Thank you so much for connecting with me again this week. Would you go to pushbackculture.org, pushbackculture.org, leave a comment, a question, or a future topic that you would like to see or hear addressed? I'd really appreciate hearing from you. Alternatively, you can go to gofam.org, which is our ministry's website. Check out the resources there for you and for your family. And we would love to hear from you and connect with you. Thank you so much for listening again this week, and I look forward to connecting with you next week. Now let's go together to set and shape the culture.